It is Friday. It has been a tremendous week here at the Elbow River Casino, the home of rawmikerichards.com in Calgary. With the weekend coming up of football, you heard Victor Newman's picks. He took the under last night. Victor's got to be a little better than that, but I don't think anyone saw 80-some-odd points coming from those two teams. Mike Moore from the Calgary Hitmen, the general manager and vice president, going to join us in just a few moments here. Talk a little WHL. My good friend Ryan Thalwell. He is one of the nicest guys you're ever going to meet. We're going to talk not only CFL, but a story that is obviously nationally recognized with those fires in Kamloops. He's part of a company that exclusively is involved in restoration of those massive events when they go south like that. For instance, Fort Mac was another one of those. They were part of that as well. DKI is the company, and do you see the logo? Or it's tiny? Okay. Well, we'll get just an understanding of what they do and what Ryan is up to, including the game tonight in the CFL, BC Lions, Edmonton Eskimos, and that probably is going to be the game of the week. So looking forward to certainly talking more about that, and then just some of the interesting news around the world of sports, including more Kyrie Irving talk, I guess. Kyrie Irving, now they're, the number of teams that are interested in him. You got San Antonio, Clippers, the Suns, the Timberwolves again. Don't you have enough, right, George Takei?
Oh, my.
Yeah, I think we all feel that way. We'll talk a little about Aaron Judge. It's one thing when you're like literally the world's most exciting player. I mean, there's excitement when the guy hits the ball. Well, then he's probably the world's most exciting player. He's even more exciting when he gets a walk-off run that wins it for the Yanks, and in the celebration, smashes his tooth on another guy's head. How often you see the goofiness of when you go over the top in celebrating and someone always gets hurt? How many football players have we seen jump up and down only to find themselves in the hospital because they celebrated too much? And here's when you know you're having a bad week. So NFL, you've seen the OTAs. They're getting ready to play. Sebastian Totola is an offensive guard for the Tennessee Titans. He was waived today. 5 days after getting shot in the leg in Miami. That's a bad week. Look, there's not a coach that's not going to tell you that nothing good happens after midnight. Why do they never listen? Why? Do you know how much money you make being a big man pushing down other big men? Do you have to go, of all places, Miami? Remember Scarface? Do you know what I'm talking about? Last time you go to a club, man, I'll tell you something fucking bad is going to happen. You never listen, Frank. Hey, Tortola, next time, go to Disney World, man. Fuck you. Yeah, go to Denny's. Actually, you know what? If it's Florida, well, if it's Florida, you go to Denny's, you might see Tiger there, right? We should give him extra awards because he had like 27 mistresses and he still was good. He was better when he fooled around. So what's the lesson we learn? What's the kids watching today? What do? Don't stop cheating. And I think that's a good lesson for all the kids. You're watching rawmikerichards.com on the dedicated YouTube channel, also on my page, rawmikerichards.com. If you've downloaded iTunes, listen to the podcast, how you doing? It's been a great week here. And those also listening on TuneIn and Google Play. So it's growing like crazy all over the place. I'm going to bring in Mike Moore. People say, wasn't he the guy in Triumph? Nope, that was Gilmore. But this guy, just as exciting, known him for a long time, and we're going to talk about the Dub, the Calgary Hitmen, and his enormous climb up the corporate ladder to eventually owning everything, or That's what I like to think he's going to do. Mikey, thanks so much for joining me here on RawMikeRichards.com.
Great to see you. It's been a while.
It has been a while, and it's interesting seeing Sean Hope Ross yesterday, and the obvious feelings I will always have for this town, still do, are tied into these moments. And when I think of traveling with the Hitman, and Martin Jones and Brandon Cozen and us going to Brandon, and it was some of the best moments I've ever had in my life. And I look at what Martin has gone on to do, and Schultze and some of these other guys. The one thing beyond the business of the sport that you're in and how competitive it is, it's really, I think, probably emotionally really worthwhile.
Yeah, especially when you see them turn into 25, 30-year-olds. They come back, they say hi, they want to be part of what we're doing. Brad Moran I hooked up with here not too long ago. So, yeah, it's great when you're in the moment with them. It's great when you see Jonesy doing what he's doing in the NHL. But
and no surprise, right?
And no surprise. Not with him, no. But it's even as good when they come back with families, and Chris Nielsen comes back. He's a doctor now, 37 years old, orthopedic surgeon. Those are cool stories. So, yeah, great to see them move on in their hockey world, but great to see them move on in life, too. And it's as you say, Brandon. Every time I walk in that hotel, I have a great memory.
yeah. Some memories that the wives wish they'd never heard about. I'm pretty sure. I think some guys still smell like cigars. I think some guys have never. Now Darcy has moved on. Jason LaBarbera in the fold. Is that right?
Yeah. Darius went to Lethbridge, a little closer to home for him. It was hard to see him go, but
really tough, I imagine. Great guy.
Yeah, such a good guy and a good goalie coach, and great with the kids. But we couldn't have found a better guy to replace him.
Amazing.
Barb's is amazing.
Yeah.
He's for all what he stands for. He knows the game. I tell him he sat on the bench for 15 years. He should know the game. So he laughs about it. But what he goes through with his son, and how him and his wife are champions for autism. He's just an unbelievable person, and he feels fortunate that he landed in our lap, and we feel as fortunate he landed in our. We have him on side.
The thing about junior hockey that sometimes gets lost, I think, on a lot of people is those that are involved with it take an enormous responsibility on creating them more than just being a hockey player, because we know like 2.5% actually go to pro. It's the smaller part of that roster. It's about making them better people and better men. And there are some that are really good at it. I think the Hitmen are, to me, at the top of that list. But it is a huge responsibility, because they're kids, they're children. These are guys who haven't even grown into their own bodies yet. I mean, they're exceptional athletes, but they're still kids, Mike.
Yeah, you have no idea how many times I've sat with the parents and the players, and I say, we are in the business of winning hockey games. We're a results-oriented business. We're in the business of making money and putting bums in the seats. But we're in the business of kids too, and we have to remember that, and we have to treat them the right way. We have to get them their education, show them the right way of doing things, and make them better people as much as we're going to make them better hockey players. And that's our responsibility, and that's what we do, and we do it well as a league. And the Calgary Hitmen, under the guidance of the Flames, are fortunate to have the resources to do it the way we do it. And it's kind of neat watching a 14-year-old just coming in after he's been drafted and graduating at 20, and it feels like it goes in about 6 months, not 6 years. It's a fast process.
The level of administration that is involved in junior hockey, to me, when we were down in the Tri-Cities and going, it's like from the educational standpoint of what needs to be done, the actual logistics of when you travel, whether it's eating, accommodation, getting to and from practices, game time. It is like watching the WWE or the Rolling Stones. All the details that go into it, it is massively draining. That's what I found. I mean, I didn't have to do anything, but I saw what you guys go through. It is incredible, the number of staff you need to make a team work.
Absolutely. And, the people that are so important, from the therapists to the equipment guys, and the restructuring we've gone through, to have the support of Ken and our ownership, to bring it into general manager just to focus on hockey, to allow me to focus on the league stuff that you're talking about, and the hockey stuff and the big business stuff, will only make us a better organization. And it's adding resources to get better and do more for our players, more for our fans. And I'm fortunate that I'm surrounded by great people, both people I answer to and people that I work with, and it makes my job easy and my days fun.
I just wonder, by the way, we're in conversation with Mike Moore, General Manager, Vice President of the Calgary Hitmen. The I don't think it's lost on the kids necessarily, but sometimes I wonder when you see whether it's Joe Otto or you mentioned Darcy, Jason LaBarbera, a Kelly Kissio when he's general manager. The depth of what they bring as people and the actual business side of it. Do you think they grasp exactly what those men are all about, or is it kind of lost on them a little bit? Maybe
I think it's growing more and more, and I always say that the business and the hockey have to be tied. And when we say business, it's to your point about we got to work hard to just to do what we do, and we need to tie what we do on the ice to what we do off the ice with our players, with our fans, and there's a lot of moving parts, and I think kids are starting to understand it more and more now, because they see what they have to do. It's not to show up at the rink and play and see what happens. The time and effort they put in, you talk about Hoper, the time and effort our kids put in the summertime getting ready. You look at a 16 or 17-year-old that comes into our league and the time and commitment that's required to be in the classroom and get marks. We push all of our guys on post-secondary education. So they're seeing it's more than just dropping the puck and playing the game. There's life, and that's an expectation of the parents too. They just don't want it to be hockey. They want their boys to learn to be better people, to come out of here with a good high school education, with an academic scholarship that when they're done, if they're not playing pro, that they can use to better themselves and create a career for themselves that will help them do well in life.
Now, Mike, it gets you talk about that it is a business. It's a results business. It's getting people into those facilities, and there's some great ones around Canada, quite frankly, not just the Dub, but that whole thing that came up with the unionization and whether the kids should be paid and all that kind of stuff. It got and does, and depending on who you talk to, like, it gets kind of ugly. There's a lot of finger pointing, and I see points, I guess, made on both sides, but is it broke? Are we saying that somehow, like conversations where they feel that NCAA athletes should be paid, have we somehow got this wrong? Because I think a lot of people miss the point that you don't believe that they're all going pro, which they don't. We know, like I said, it's less than 2. It's like 2.5%. And when they're done, they're able to have an entire education paid for. And I think sometimes that doesn't get talked about enough because that costs a lot of money. That's built into the junior program. So when you hear those arguments about those guys having the kids having a union being paid, what is the reaction that you had to that, or in junior hockey for those that run the teams? What is the feeling when you hear that?
Well, I think it's exactly what we talked about earlier. We're running rosters of 22, 23, 24 kids. We're housing each and every one of those kids and making sure that they're eating properly, sleeping properly, getting to the rink properly, that they're getting the tutors to do the homework, to get the marks that they're capable of getting, that they're getting community service and working in the community to give back to the community so they do become more well-rounded. Equipment, scholarships after the fact, treating them extremely well, and we know we do it well as a Canadian Hockey League. It's not like this is a moneymaker. We got to work hard to pay bills and give these players the experience. And
see, the other side sometimes has these arguments about that. There's an indication that there's all this money being made by all these junior teams, and it's sort of like slave labor, and the kids are being used. But I don't think that's accurate at all.
No, I think the best source would probably be the players themselves. But again, we evaluate ourselves and make sure what we're doing is to the best of our ability, not for us, but for the players. We want everybody coming to our league, and I know specifically for the Calgary Hitmen, I've always said it, when a player leaves or asked to be to go from the Calgary Hitmen, whether it's through a trade or a release and he's not playing for us anymore, I want them to be disappointed.
Right.
I don't want them smiling leaving here, because it's got to be such a good experience that they can't wait to get here and don't want to leave. And when I see 20-year-olds coming through our league and there's tears being shed after 5 or 6 years, it's not that they're soft. They cared, and they genuinely understand that they're going to be missing something that's been a wonderful part of their life. And that's a testament to all the teams in the Canadian Hockey League, the Western Hockey League, and how we do things. And we will continue to find ways to get better, to help these kids become better people.
And they do. I mean, I can speak, honestly about meeting young NHL players, guys who've been in the league, like they're rookies, 1-2 years, and I've always said the same thing, that they're very respectful. I think they're very humble. I think they understand where they are in life. I don't think they take it for granted. I think it probably was worse for, when I look at guys like our age, probably back in the 70s and 80s. I mean, they I don't know if there's that kind of dedication like that these kids have. I mean, I remember talking to Derek Sanderson and saying, can you imagine if people had cameras in their phones back when you played, as bad as things kind of got for you from time to time, at least they weren't taking pictures of it. And so I think there is a real hardcore sacrifice and dedication these kids have that I mean, guys came back in the 70s. They came back to camp to get into shape.
Yeah.
It's unheard of now. Unheard of.
Yeah, you hit on social media, and you can imagine the pressures these kids are under social media and what they can and can't post and what they can and can't say. And again, those are learning curves that we go through every day with them and try and teach them, not just because they're representing our organization, they're representing themselves as young adults, and they're going to represent themselves as they get older. And one stupid mistake, one stupid post, whether they're a hockey player or not, but it's pressure, but it's a great learning opportunity for them and for us. And but you're right, the game has changed, the landscape has changed, and kids coming in are a lot more educated, a lot more versed in what they want and where they're going. But you said it earlier, not many of them are going to go play pro. And we know that 80 or 90% of them leaving the door are going to get an education after the fact, but they're leaving us better people, and that's critical.
Well, the Dub is a tough league. And, people say to me, well, the Hitmen, they're not doing what they did when you were here. I said, well, if they still were, then they're like literally the greatest organization I've known because, you see the Q, you see what does in the OHL, you see the fine players, obviously. But, boy, I'll tell you, the Dub has its own style, and that style is, they give her every night. And you got to – sometimes the bus rides are kind of tough, speaking to Brandon, and when Brandon's got to get in a bus and they got to drive to Everett or however that works, I mean, that is tough. And so, therefore, I think when you take a look at the kids that you have, and this is each and every one of those teams in the WHL, it ain't easy. It's really competitive. I mean, crazy competitive.
It's competitive, and you talk about the bus rides. We left Victoria last year after playing because you can't get on a ferry at 7 a.m. and got in at 1:30 the next morning for traffic, for landslides, you name it. That's a long day on the bus for players, let alone us 50-plus guys. It's hard on the old back and the butt. So it's, again, good learning lessons. I know the guys that go to the NHL are much more versed on the travel and the demands. The O is a lot closer as far as travel, but they have their own demands as well. And again, it's teaching them to be humans, and when they get to the workforce, they get accountability, they get discipline, they get time and being on time and work ethic, because it's been ingrained in them for 3, 4, 5 years when they're in the Western Hockey League. And it is a tough league. Calgary Hitmen, it was a tough year last year. We made the playoffs. We worked our way to get in the playoffs, but it was a grind every single day. It was a grind for us, for the coaching staff, for the players. But we found a way, and we'll be better for it this year. We got a good young group coming back, but young is the operative word, and we got some work to do still. Well, there's a lot of great moments that you have for those that watch junior hockey. For me, even some of them weren't actual game memories. And I've talked about before, the first time I saw Tyler Myers skating on the ice, I think it was just before practice, or practice was wrapping up, and I had a chance to see this massive human being and thinking, how can a guy be like Chara big, like 6'7" big, and still have skating ability like that and have hands like he did? I still remember just watching him thinking, this it looks like an optical illusion to be that big and have those kinds of skills. And that's what we're seeing, as time goes on. I mean, it's tougher and tougher for Brandon Cozen or a 5'8" guy or whatever. Not that they can't, but boy, oh boy, the kids get big. The goalies are 6'6", for God's sakes. Yeah. It's interesting. You watch the draft, and there seems to be a shift a little bit back to the younger, faster guy. But Kiss, for 20 years, built the team around big, strong, mobile defensemen, and we're not changing it. It works. We've got a young guy coming in this year at 16. He's 6'6", 200 pounds, and he's mobile. He's 6'6", 200. Big boy, great kid. Played 10 games with us last year. Are the Stamps hanging around looking at this kid? Or yeah, he may. They're Raptors. But no, it's the game's changed a little bit, but yeah, goalies, if you're not over 6 feet, it's a grind. But there's good ones in the NHL that are under 6 feet or around 6 feet, so you can't slough them all off. But it's finding the best player and build the best team and win. That's the goal. The Memorial Cup, I think, also had one of the harder moments to watch, because I thought the Hitmen team, they were certainly, that team was good enough to win it all. Like, they were good enough to win it all. And there was that game at late against Windsor. And I can't remember who coughed up the puck, because Windsor was such an aggressive team. They were so well coached. And Taylor Hall gets a breakaway on Martin Jones, and that kind of sealed the deal for Windsor. And, even though you're not a parent, when you're as close to the team as I was at that time, you feel like one. And I thought, looking at that moment, it was like
they talk about teachable moments. I guarantee you Martin has never forgot being scored upon in that way, in that building, at that time. It's just what happens in professional sports. Sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. And when you don't, hopefully it prepares you for what's going to happen in the NHL. And I'm sure I remember talking to you, certainly Kelly Kissio, and I know Darcy, and saying, so with Martin, they're like, he's NHL material. It's going to happen. And the one thing about Martin Jones that maybe people don't know is he was a real cerebral kid. He was a real smart guy. And I said, as hard as it was to watch that and probably kicking a chair or whatever I did at that point, look at the two names I just mentioned. I mean, these are NHL players. One of them goes basically, number one. But that's what comes with junior hockey. There's a lot of joy and sometimes there's a little bit of pain with it. That was one for me.
Yeah, it was a tough tournament because it's funny. I ran into a guy yesterday at one of our sponsor sports stores, and he's from Windsor. And I asked him if he played in the Western League. He said, "No, I'm from Windsor." I said, "You play for Windsor?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Did you beat us in the Cup in 2010 in the round robin?" He said, "No, I had just got drafted." He said, "But you remember Taylor Hall falling in the boards? You remember that?" We didn't think he was getting up.
Yeah,
and yet you go back, you talk about Cozy. He falls into the boards late in the Tri-Cities game and hurts his ankle and doesn't play in the Memorial Cup.
That's right.
So the margin of error is so freaking small. And you go to that moment on Jonesy and turning the puck over. It's so small. Day to day, it's small during the regular season, let alone when you get the best teams in the Memorial Cup. And we could easily won that year. But it was a good ride, and we'll continue to learn from it.
Well, as I said, you do a fantastic job with just amazing kids. You're with a great organization in the Flames. I love the building. I will always love the building. But, of course, are we saying at some point that won't be the building you're playing in? I mean, what are the plans with this?
Well, we'd sure like to see a new building and think it's something that we can build a city around, let alone what we do. The conversations and talks will continue, and hopefully there'll be some positive results as we move forward.
Well, I look forward to it. I'll be back in Calgary every 3 months with rawmikeRichards.com. I'll be back again in October, so I'm going to be hanging around that building.
October, well, you better see a visit in the dressing room. It's been a long time and too long, and love to have you back. So.
Mikey, thanks so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. Great to see you. That is Mike Moore, the General Manager, Vice President of your Calgary Hitmen. Great job, as you can see, and that's sort of, I think, the benchmark of what happens when you groom young men, when there is a level of mentorship which exists within that organization. They have a high standard, and once again, that goes beyond just the winning and losing. As Mike said, last year they had to work real hard just to make the playoffs because you see junior hockey from coast to coast, not just here in the Dub, but the OHL and the Q. It's just there's a level of hockey. The one thing that I would say about these young men, and again we refer to them as kids because that's what they are. I mean, you talk about 14 years old. It's still for me a little cringeworthy when you start talking about the scrutiny that they go under sometime with the World Juniors, the way that people just at a barbecue or a dinner party. And sometimes the way the media just goes after some of the kids, it makes me feel uncomfortable because I really don't think just because you can read the name on the back of that jersey that you have to treat them in the same manner that you would, a Sidney Crosby or Evgeny Malkin. I don't sometimes really agree with the fact that they are perceived to be literally pros already. I got news for you: not everyone on the World Juniors goes pro either. It's a tough business to make it in, and I think sometimes when you have an understanding in an organization like that, and look, a lot of the junior clubs have great people. It's not just obviously the Hitman. I have a lot of respect for them because there's an enormous responsibility, not just in teaching them how to, perhaps be better hockey players, but as Mike said, quite frankly, better people. So for Mike Moore coming in from the Calgary Hitmen, that was a great chance to catch up with him. You're watching rawmikeRichards.com on the dedicated YouTube channel. You're also watching us, hopefully, on rawmikeRichards.com. I want you to subscribe, join the Richards Army. And, of course, as you see, Bet Regal is our, first sponsor of a significance that we mentioned. We're going to be using Bet Regal for our sexy picks, and they are sexy. Oh, if you could make out with picks, those are the kinds of picks I'm talking about. I'm talking about pantless picks. Naked picks, if you will, whatever it is. Bet Regal, they welcome all of that. Tonight's Edmonton and BC. That's kind of the game of the week for me, even though the CFL's really got it together this year. I mean, it's been pretty tight. And speaking of the CFL, can you say legendary when you say Ryan Thalwell? Legendary, not one of many, or collectively one of many. Ryan Thelwell, former BC Lion and Calgary Stampeder.
Mr. Richards, my friend.
Oh, so great. Here, just bring that thing in. Thanks so much. Great seeing you.
Always a pleasure to see you. It's been way too long.
Yeah, it has been too long. And, there's a lot of things we can talk about. But, I'm looking at last night's game and the CFL. And in the last couple of years, I got a little nervous because I see a lot of flags.
Yeah.
I see the game slowing down way more than I want. So, like any offensive, coach is going to tell you, coordinator, you're not seeing that rhythm. It's hard to play offense when there's challenges and flags.
Yep.
But this year, somehow, every stinking game is like within 3-4 points of each other, and it doesn't really matter what the standings are. It feels like it's kind of up for grabs every night.
Yeah, it's been exciting, that's for sure. Now, I got as a wide receiver, you would think I'd be a fan of, because the offensive players seem to be getting a lot more freedom, but I'm not a fan of all the flags and all the challenges. You know what? I'm a big believer, and maybe I'm old school. You play. There's going to be clutching and grabbing on every play, right? So to slow the game down and let's go back and take a look, you can pretty much throw a flag on every play. So that aspect of the game, I don't enjoy. But you're right. It has games are close. And I guess that's what fans want to see.
Well, they do want to see it. And as you said, I think that, and I've said it this week, we talked to Rob Maver, Bruce Covington came in, and I said, instead of coaches looking all over the field trying to find something, maybe on the way or the other side of the field or whatever it is, I'm like, I think, and I still believe this, that you've got to concentrate on your officiating, maybe pay them more, train them better, whatever happens to be, and then at the end of the day, you have to say, and this is how I always played sports with, is that official, that a referee, we're both playing with him.
Yes.
So he's either making some good calls or making some bad calls, but we're both playing with the same guy, and that was just part of the understanding of athletics.
Yes.
That you have to go with that. When you start saying, I'm saying get rid of replay, or there's an isolated shot, the ball's going to you, and you may want to challenge something there. I get that part. But look into the other side of the field. Dave Dickinson did it in Montreal, and I thought, Dave, come on.
There was a couple of times when I said the exact same thing. I thought about texting him. Dave, come on now. What are you doing? But, yeah, you know what? What's wrong with the old judgment call by the refs? And you just live with it and you move on, right?
Yes.
Like, there's so many camera angles, so many cameras nowadays that,
you can find you can find something on every play if you want.
So for me, it's just, like I said, I'm old school. You know what? Make a call. Yeah, you're going to be upset. Guys are going to be frustrated. Refs are going to be villains. But that's just the part of the game. I don't have an issue with it.
Well, as I said, this year, I think, and tonight, the BC Lions, Edmonton Eskimos, that's going to be a good one.
Yeah, good game.
Yeah, you got and Travis Lulay. I mean, having the luxury that's the guy that comes off the bench. Now, because you're still pretty close with guys in BC, are you not?
Sorry?
You're still pretty close with some of the guys in BC.
Yes. Yeah. I talked to G-Roy quite a bit. I had a chance to visit with Wally a couple of months ago when I was back out in BC. So more guys on the coaching staff. Yeah. More so than the players,
right.
But yeah, I do. I still follow BC quite a bit.
You turn it on, and someone said it was an American guy. And he's like, "Is that Clemson?" They look at the BC Lions new uniforms. I'm like, "No, not Clemson. No, it's the BC Lions." I kind of like those unis, though. I do like them. I think it's a good look.
I like them, and you know what? I got to give credit to the Lions. Like even back in the day when I was playing, every year they seem to come out with something new. Where some of the teams will switch to their traditional or keep to their traditional. Yeah. I like some of the looks. I like their new uniforms that they brought out this year. To me, it's you got to get those young fans interested, and uniforms are a part of it, unfortunately. So.
We're in conversation with Ryan Thelwell here on rawmikerichards.com. Also watching on the dedicated YouTube channel. Make sure you hit the little red button at the bottom that says subscribe. It's the easiest way to see it. Football and the way people always talk about changes in the game, and I said, well, to me, the biggest change is the fact that on the legal side of things, when it comes to player safety, and once the NFL players got together and said, hey, we believe that we weren't fully educated or that, concussion issues, that we have seen a lot of things for player safety change that game to back in the NFL. It's like, well, there really aren't any kick returns anymore because they're just going to kick it through the end zone because of player safety. Yeah. How far does this go, do you think? We see how far we go with protecting the quarterback, and I start getting this feeling like, when I see boxing, when I see UFC, we just know what concussed athletes go through.
Yes.
Do you think we get to the point where football is in danger of being the game that it was or is?
Do you know what? I've actually heard people questioning the longevity of the game, right? Just for that specific reason. Because it's a contact sport, and guys are going to get hit. And you know, I know when I watch, you know, NFL games or even CFL games, and sometimes, like, once again, the flags will go and the quarterbacks get touched. I get frustrated with it. But, you know, with that said, what do you do, right? I understand guys are suffering, you know, once they're done playing, and you know, lawsuits are, you know, being tossed around, but, you know, we go in knowing what the risks are. Now, were we as informed back then as we are now? No, but, you know, I know I'm getting myself into. I know that there's going to be risks involved, and you know, it's a contact sport, and you know,
and you're wired that way. People say, you know, it's unfair. I go, trust me, if you play football, you probably actually get physically excited. The thought of hitting someone, hearing that crack of the plastic, doing a pit drill, whatever it happens to be. That's why you play it, because you like it.
And it's just a natural reaction, right? That you get that adrenaline flowing, and you know, you're running around and bullets are flying. That's just your natural reaction.
The history of Ryan Thalwell, which sometimes I don't know if people understand just what a cool story you have. And so you're in London, Ontario, right, originally?
Yes,
London,
correct.
Ontario.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's good high school football there. Good high school football, very good high school football, and one of the few areas actually in Ontario where you can say that it's tough to find. But where you go from there, I think maybe people don't know about, because for a Canadian, that's a pretty big jump. So you have a choice of how many schools coming out of London. Who are looking at you in terms of scholarships? Yeah,
so I had 3. So I know I went on a visit with Iowa State. I was offered a scholarship with University of Hawaii. And that's one of those where they want you to commit before they bring you out on that.
We get the free trip to Hawaii. Yeah.
But you know what? It wasn't it's too far.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted to be a little bit closer to home. And there was also Northern Illinois along with Minnesota.
Northern Illinois, sure, yeah. The Huskies. Very good school.
But I ultimately chose University of Minnesota because of the conference, you know, the Big Ten. You know, we weren't a powerhouse, you know, back in those days, but it was still one of the top conferences down in the NCAA, and we had maybe 2 or 3 games a year that were close to my hometown, you know, Michigan State. So for me, it was one of the big reasons why I decided to go there.
Who did you play with at that time that the people would know watching here today? At that time, you know,
so
either against or with.
That was back in the day. So my very first game at the University of Minnesota. So I didn't play. We played Penn State. So this would have been 94, 95, and this is their first year in the Big Ten, and I believe they were co-national champions that year. So they had Kajana Carter. Kerry Collins, Bobby Ingram was there,
and you're seeing Joe Pa. You're seeing Joe Paterno on the side.
Oh, Paterno! I wanted to go get an autograph.
Yeah, who wouldn't? Who wouldn't? Honestly, I know.
Like growing up in London, like our high school team was based on the Penn State. Like our uniforms were the exact same as Penn State's.
Yeah, classic old.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Our head coach was a big Penn State fan, so that's what we saw growing up. So it was pretty cool. I got to play against some pretty good players. You know, Eddie George. Mike Allstott.
But I'm saying it's, you know, to go from London, Ontario to that is significant. Now, when you finish, so you go as a senior. You did 4 years.
Yes.
Okay. I wish they still did 4 years. I know there's a huge argument, but I you know, at that point, I think you become a man. I think you've grown in your body physically. There's a maturity that comes with the 4 years. Instead of that guy last night getting his leg shot in Miami, come on. I mean, that's what happens when you play 1 or 2 years. You're still children. So what are the choices that you have come out of school, out of Minnesota?
So once I was finished, you know, I did pretty well. Like I was like second team All Big Ten, but you know, wasn't quite sure if I was going to get drafted. I knew if I did, it would most likely be on that second day. So, you know, 4 to 7. So I did get an invite to the NFL Combine, which is a pretty neat experience in itself, and went through that process, and spent draft day at home. I had a bunch of buddies come over, and local news station came by,
Sure,
and which was a little bit stressful because you don't know if you're going to get drafted, and all these people are here at this house, for me. And but
where's Ryan? He's crying. Actually, when they watched him, I think he's crying.
I think I was a couple of times. It was neat. I got the call from Dwight Clark, and it was a pretty neat experience, and to go through that process was pretty fun.
NFL Combines, was it intimidating?
Very intimidating. It's a job interview on steroids. People have no idea what that process is like, and you go in, you do an interview with maybe 6 or 7 teams, and they've got their entire staff there. You go through, you see pretty much every single medical staff, and they're poking and prodding, and they know everything about your history from the time you're in high school through university. So it was pretty intimidating, but I guess that's what they want to see. They want to stress you out to see how you react. So I enjoyed the process.
So you get a couple of invites, and what leads you to the CFL? Eventually, how do we see Ryan Thowell?
Well, during that same time, I did get drafted by the 49ers, but I was also drafted by the BC Lions in the same year. So they held my rights. You know what? I had to give the NFL my shot. So that's
you
what
have
I did.
to.
You have to. So I went through. I spent my first training camp with the 49ers and spent a couple of years on and off the practice roster with the San Diego Chargers. Spent a little time with the Steelers on the active roster, which was pretty neat.
That San Diego period, is that the Doug Flutie at that point?
No. So this was the Ryan Leaf period.
Oh boy.
We were that was my draft year. It was 98, so we had Ryan Leaf and Peyton Manning. So
wow.
We had the best defense in the league and the worst offense in the league.
BC Lions, and that's why. So G-Roy and you have been pretty tight ever since.
G-Roy is one of my best friends.
Yeah.
I consider him family, and he's my brother. So yeah, he's that's my boy. We came in together, and But
I believe even he believes he's a pretty good player.
Oh yeah, if you were to ask G-Roy, he would hesitate to tell you that he's a pretty good player. He'll let you know. But that's what makes him special.
He's great for the league and having that. Then eventually you get to Calgary.
Yes.
And now Calgary is your home.
Yes. We made the move. My wife, my family of 4 now, which I've got to say something really quick. Yeah,
4?
You didn't know that.
No, I did not.
You are a man of legend in the Thelwell household.
I hope it's a good reason.
Because my kids think I'm a permanent member of the Madagascar staff. So we still got that song going.
I let them move it. Ryan Thowell, let them move it. People are like, isn't that racist what you're doing? Why? Why is everything racism? It's not racist. It's just a song. I shoved his name in there. He let them move it. I was like, okay, fine, whatever.
Well, the kids loved it.
Yeah, well, good.
The kids loved it.
That's good. Well, and one of the reasons I also want to talk to you today is, our good friend Jeff Stewart with DKI Canada. And I believe, Russell, do we have the logo? Is it finally... It's like, 1 millimeter big? Can they find it on there? But very good friends and supporters of rawmike.richards.com. Explain to people what DKI is and your association with that company.
Yes, so DKI stands for Disaster Cleanup International, and they're a national entity. So I'm with Rocky Cross Construction DKI. So we're local to Calgary, Rocky Cross DKI, but we are a member of the larger organization. So for what we do, we're a full service emergency restoration provider. So,
well, when you say emergency, and just so people understand, the moment I heard about the devastation in Fort Mac, I thought, well, there they go, because that's what they do for a living. It's when things are at its worst.
And that's exactly right. That's what we do. We had Jeff did a great job. Jeff Stewart mobilizing our crew for Fort Mac. So we had our presence there.
What was that like? What was that like?
I didn't get a chance to go.
Okay.
I know that we had several project managers that were up there. Our owner, Al Welton, was up there, and he was up there for a couple of months. It was all hands on deck. In times of need, that's really what it comes down to is, you set stuff aside and it's all hands on deck. So I know just from hearing stories from the guys that were up there, you really had to see it to believe it.
It didn't look real. It didn't look real on television.
We watched it on TV, and we actually had some remnants of smoke, coming from Fort Mac, and I could only imagine what the people of Fort Mac have been through, and you got to give them credit. They're a resilient bunch of people, and I see what they've done to support what's going on out in BC right now with the wildfires.
Well, and so people understand here that if you're on the East Coast, we don't have like a weather report, for instance, where the weather guy is going to come on and say smoky. So years ago when I lived here, David Spence, our good friend at the CTV affiliate here in Calgary, I heard him say tonight, blah, 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 and smoky. So I saw him the next day. I went up to him and I said, David, being from the Toronto area, I'm not familiar with smoky. What is that? He goes, well, when something burns, you get smoke. And if you get smoke, then it'd be smoky then, wouldn't it? What a prick. Damn you, Spence. And that we are seeing from Kamloops.
Yes.
And that's currently where your company, once again, they've been back in the cars and away you go.
We're there. Jeff Stewart's out there right now, and he's got our group mobilized, and we're ready to pitch in when needed. So it really is all hands on deck, and all the members from across Western Canada, we come together and we do what we can to support. If it's passing out water bottles, then it's passing out water bottles. If it's helping folks have their houses cleaned or whatever they ask of us, we're there to provide that service. So.
And what I also find, again, this is you talk about resiliency. I sometimes take a look at the people in the province of Alberta because they're just very special to me, but they're kind of special to everybody because I heard that members and citizens of Fort McMurray started volunteering to go down to Kamloops and help them because they've been through it already.
Well, because they've seen it firsthand. They've been through it firsthand. People had to leave their homes on a last-minute notice. So they know what the people of the interior BC are going through. So, like I said, they're a resilient group of people, and they were the first to hey, what can we do to help? And, let's just pack up, let's head out there, and let's do what we can do to pitch in. So, that's the beauty about, Alberta in general. I find that we have very generous people here, and it's that Alberta mentality, right? So
are you seeing signs down Highway 2 or you can stay here, live with us. I'm like, that ain't happening in Toronto, I can tell you that right now. I think you see signs, get off my land. I think that's what you see.
And that's what you did. We got a lot of that. I know my wife and I even talked about, because we had friends, really close friends, who lost their home in Fort Mac. DKI, their members in Fort Mac, the owner of the location in Fort Mac, they lost their house. They were in Toronto. Yeah, they were in Toronto at a DKI meeting when the news came out, what was going on in Fort Mac and the evacuation. They lost their house. So, like I said, once again, we've got members within our own organization that have been through it and seen it firsthand. So that's what we're here.
Well, it's great. We're happy to talk about DKI because they've done a wonderful job and obviously been very supportive of me here on rawmikeRichards.com. Boy, Ryan, so nice to see you. And my son still talks about it, right? He's like, are you going to see Ryan? I go, you live here, son. You can see him anytime you want. I got to get on a plane.
I know. You know what? That's my fault. I've got to reach out. And I knew he was out here, and I knew he was, I know you had a hard time letting him go. We had.
When I threw him on a plane, said, see you later, do something.
But like I said, I just got to say we miss you out here. It hasn't been quite the same. I know that, when I moved from Vancouver to Calgary, you're one of the reasons that I started listening. We always, as athletes, we're put on with the sports, broadcasters, right. And we had to do it because that was a part of our job. But you really got me listening in the morning, and you put a smile on my face. And we were sad when you left, and I was excited. I shot you an email when I found out you were going to be here. So we miss you. Yeah,
it's great. I'll be back every 3 months, and I look forward to it, and hopefully see you much more of you, Ryan. Thank you so much. Take care. What an awesome man. That is Ryan Thelwell, one of my favorites, and quite frankly, everyone else's as well. And now working with DKI and his company, actually RCCN. And these are the kinds of things that this week that I really appreciate. The fact that there's still special people out here. And once again, if you want to be a part of what this show is, just let me know. rawmikeRichards.com. That's the name of the show. Click on it. Become a member of Richards Army by subscribing. And, of course, you also want to subscribe to the YouTube channel just as you're watching it right now. Click on that little red subscribe. That helps us a lot. Also available on Facebook. That's Raw Mike Richards. Just look for it. It's right out there. And, of course, you can get us on iTunes as well for the podcast, as well as Google Play. And TuneIn. So people were asking me about TuneIn because we still haven't got it right. It takes, like, what, Russell, like 12 hours to get it up there. And what we wanted is to have that free audio streaming. So if you want to in your car, you just, hit that button, that podcast thing, and away you go. You've got it if you want to listen to it that way. Because if you're in Western Canada, if you're here in Calgary, then you're getting this show from 8 to 9 in the morning. We broadcast, at 10 a.m. every day Eastern, normally. And if you want it in the car, you should be able to get it in the car. So Russ and I are going to work on that one because I'll be honest, I know we didn't register the thing right. It's on there. You can find it. You see all the episodes. But what we want to do is get it to you and streaming it live. Because, once again, if we can get it in the hands of the people, we're happy about that. Also, when I take a look at the announcement we had with Bet Regal, right, George Takei, that was pretty impressive, right?
Oh, my.
Yeah, George Takei. That's what we're using exclusively as we get closer to the fall. All the lines will come from Bet Regal. Here's the good news about Bet Regal. Better lines than everybody else. Now, people can say, how can you know that? Because that's the mandate, is to make sure you get better lines so you don't get hammered as much on the juice. No, I didn't mean it in that sense. I meant that in the gambling sense, not like Russell last night. Probably carrying on. I don't know what happened with him. I saw him, and then he was gone, and then I saw some girls crying. Saw some crying girls, and I figured maybe something's gone wrong. Russell gone wild. In video stores now. So we're going to be taking a look at some of those numbers. Once again, tonight you've got BC and Edmonton. Victor Newman said take the under in last night's game. Don't think it really worked out that way. Oh, here are the lines. That is for tonight, right? So Edmonton and BC. Now, the total, I don't have it exactly in front of me, but I believe the total is, what, 54.5? Is that what I'm looking at, Russell? Give or take? 54.5? Can you see it? Is that what it is? What? No. I realize that's, I know. I realize it's 7 points. Is that what they're saying? They're not saying. BC and Edmonton? BC's plus? Okay, so I'm going to, all right. Hey, Mike, why don't you just put it on your screen? Idiot. Loser. Sorry, let me. You just type it in Bet Regal, and there's nothing like people typing on television. You don't get entertainment like that everywhere. I think I gotta start drinking early again. Here we go. Bet Regal. Looking at the lines for tonight, I can't believe that it says +7. Let's see if I can find it. Once again, go to rawmikeRichards.com. There's the link right there if you want to set up your brand new account, because that's what I want. I want to prove to those that advertise on the show that we actually get people doing what is in their best interest to advertise on the show. Here we go. Okay, sports. Wow, the Wi-Fi in here not as what is it, a horse and a carrot on a turnstile? Why is it taking so long? It's Scott Roberts' fault. We don't have heavy play today, by the way, on the on slots. I guess they're too busy trying to find shoes. Okay, here we go now. Looking at, oh my God. Sorry, folks. I guess I should have had this up earlier on. It is Friday. It's been a long week. All right, now this is where you see a little bit of frustration because it's not doing what I want. Okay, so what is the total? What's the total? Do you know what I mean? Oh my God, this is killing me. Here we go. No, we're not. Fuck you. God damn it. I hate computers. I've always hated computers. That's what happens when you rolled them in mud at recess. That's what happens. We push the nerds around, and now they're just laughing at us. They're laughing right now, aren't you? Pocket pens, big glasses. Edmonton Eskimos. Here we go. BC Lions. That only took 10 minutes. The total on this is 53. 53. Take the over. We back up on the screen now. Do you got that? So 53, I would take the total. I'm looking at the Rough Riders and the Argos. I think I took the Argos +3 is what was on that. And then let's see if the line has moved. It was -13 Calgary at home over the Ticats. It is still -13. I think that's a gift. I hate to say it. So go to BetRegal, register. It is accounted on behalf of me and rawmikerichard.com, so it helps us out a lot. So if you want to do that, make some money, and we're all very happy. So I think I'm going to sign off here on what was an outstanding week. I know all our numbers went up everywhere, and the people here have been just absolutely amazing. Is Scott Roberts not here? Is he is he wearing his mirrored shoes, going into the women's washroom again? because I got to be honest, Scotty has been amazing. Jade, who helped us out. I mean, look what's behind me. That was the lovely Jade who put this together. The Elbow River Casino, the home of MikeRichards.com. I'll be here every 3 months, and looking forward to it. And also, as you saw, an appearance on the Fan 960, and that might not be a rarity, coming up very soon, just to entice you a little bit of what's going on. As our show continues to get bigger, we tend to have more and more subscribers on each one of our platforms, so that makes us really happy. And once again, just being back in this great town, how can you lose? Because they have treated us like gold, and we certainly appreciated that.
What? Did we just become best friends? Yep. You want to go do karate in the garage? Yep. It's
Oh my.
Yes, George Takei, yes.
Oh my.
For God's sakes, Mr. Sulu, I need you.
Oh my.
Yeah. That's been the kind of week. There's Nav and Steve out there. Look at them all. Fancy with their... Is that sweatpants and good shoes? Is that what I see over there? Save that for Edmonton.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Thank you, Calgary. What an awesome week. The Elbow River Casino has been amazing. When you're in Calgary, this is where you want to be. You've been watching rawmikerichards.com. Have yourself a great weekend, and thank you, Calgary, for an amazing week. Right, George Takei?
Oh my.
I love doing that.